veritable political storm is brewing. This after the BJP disassociated itself from a big personal frontal attack made by prominent BJP Member of Parliament Nishikant Dubey on the Chief Justice and the higher courts. While JP Nadda was firm in his argument that the language used by Dubey was not one endorsed or approved of by the BJP, the opposition isn't letting go. They're saying take action against Dubey if you're really disassociating from his remarks. I'm Barkha, you're with the Mojo story. This political war erupted after BJP's prominent Member of Parliament Nishikant Dubey basically launched a big personal frontal attack on the Chief Justice of India and the higher courts. Dubey went so far as to say that the Chief Justice held the responsibility for all religious strife and civil wars that were brewing in the country. The BJP MP has only followed Vice President Dhankhar, who referenced the Supreme Court's response to be like that of a nuclear missile. This tension started after the Supreme Court set a deadline for both the president and the governors when it came to hearing a case on the Tamil Nadu governor sitting on 10 bills. The Supreme Court declared those bills as having been passed and said when it came to confusion about the constitutional validity of a bill as claimed by the governor, the president should take no more than 3 months. But this is now full-blown politics. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa released a list of judges that he said had been targeted by the Congress in the past, making the argument that the Congress was in no position to make demands for action against Nishikant Dubey. Mr. Dubey then reposted Himanta Biswa Sarma's tweet with a cryptic note of poetry. But this is hardcore politics. What is actually going on here? Nishikant Dubey is no marginal member of parliament when it comes to the BJP. He has often been a prominent face of the party on the floor of the house. Equally, Mr. Nadda's words were unequivocal and scathing. Nishikant Dubey has made other comments since then. He has located S.Y. Qureshi, former CEC's comments on public issues in the context of his religious identity and called him a Muslim former CAC. What's actually going on here? Let's introduce our panel today as we try and decode both the politics and the legality, though I would argue it's now mostly in the realm of politics. Let me introduce our guest today. Rajat Sethi, political analyst, is with us. Good to see you, Rajat. Ashwini Shahi, leader of the BJP, is with us. Namaskar, Ashwini ji. Also joining us is Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate. Good to see you, Sanjay. And Sanjay Jha, former spokesperson of the Congress, a party he still supports, is with us as well. Welcome, everybody. Let's get started with some key comments made by Nishikant Dubey for anyone who may have forgotten or not seen this. Take a look.
इस देश में धार्मिक युद्ध भड़काने के लिए केवल और केवल सुप्रीम कोर्ट जिम्मेवार है. शो मी द फेस विल शो यू द लॉ. सुप्रीम कोर्ट अपनी सीमा से बाहर जा रहा है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट की सीमा यह है कि भारत का संविधान जिस कानून को बनाया उस कानून की उसको व्याख्या करनी है, और यदि वो व्याख्या नहीं कर सकती है और सब कुछ के लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट जाना है तो इस संसद का कोई मतलब नहीं है. इस देश का कानून भारत का पार्लियामेंट बनाता है. उस पार्लियामेंट को आप डिक्टेट करेंगे. इस देश में जितने गृह युद्ध हो रहे हैं उसके जिम्मेवार केवल यहाँ के चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया संजीव खन्ना साहब.
All right. Now, I should say that Mr. Nadda, the BJP president, was unequivocal in saying that this is not language that we approve of. The BJP has nothing to do with these comments. We have that tweet by Mr. Nadda, which will come up shortly. There it is. The BJP has nothing to do with the statements made by BJP MPs Nishikant Dubey and Dinesh Sharma. And the party goes on to say that it's always respected the judiciary and gladly accepted its orders and suggestions. I have instructed both of them and everyone else not to make these statements, but the opposition isn't letting up. And there is an actual tension here because Vice President Jagdeep Dhankhar preceded Nishikant Dubey in also attacking the judiciary. Let's get responses in. Ashwini ji, आपसे शुरू करती हूँ. पार्टी के लीडरशिप ने बहुत एक लक्ष्मण रेखा तय कर दी है, लेकिन एक परसेप्शन है, अगर आज हम हिमंता बिस्वा जी का ट्वीट देखें, कि एक डिफैक्टो सपोर्ट निशिकांत दुबे के लिए अभी भी है. चाहे उनकी भाषा के लिए ना हो, उनकी सेंटिमेंट के लिए जरूर एक तरह से सपोर्ट है.
बरखा जी, देखिए, भारतीय जनता पार्टी ने अपना रुख बता दिया है और ये बताता है कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी अभी भी संविधान का, न्यायालय का सम्मान करती है. ये पार्टी का रुख आ गया है. मगर निशिकांत जी ने जो कहा, आज पूरे देश में उस पर चर्चा हो रही है. बहुत सी चीजें ऐसी हैं जो संविधान में नियम कानून के दायरे में बंधा हुआ है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट के कॉलेजियम ने राहुल गांधी जी को और ओवैसी जी को, इन लोगों को छूट दे रखा है कि ये कोर्ट के खिलाफ कुछ भी बोल सकते हैं, इन लोगों के खिलाफ कुछ नहीं, कोई एक्शन नहीं होगा। राम मंदिर बाबरी मस्जिद वाला जब फैसला आया था पूरे देश ने माना था, लेकिन ओवैसी जी तो अभी भी चिल्लाते हैं कि फैसले के खिलाफ चिल्लाते हैं। आपने ध्यान दिया होगा, फैसले के खिलाफ चिल्लाते हैं। कभी भी उनके खिलाफ कोई ऐसी चर्चा नहीं हुई कि उनको जेल में जाना चाहिए या नहीं जाना चाहिए। आज के दिन तक, कुछ दिन पहले तक चिल्ला रहे थे जब तक ये वक्फ बिल का नहीं आया था मामला। राहुल गांधी जी कई बार बोल चुके हैं, सदन में उन्होंने इस मुद्दे को उठाया है, तो इसमें कहीं कहने की जरूरत नहीं है। संविधान को उस दिन खरोच तक नहीं आई जिस दिन इंदिरा जी ने कहा क्या जस्टिस शाह इस देश को चलाएंगे, लेकिन आज संविधान को तो पूरा डेंट हो गया एकदम से, जिस तरीके से ये चीजें चल रही हैं। तो इस देश में ये दोहरा मापदंड क्यों? और आपने अभी जो है हेमंता बिस्वा शर्मा जी के ट्वीट की बात की, उसमें एक एक पॉइंट उन्होंने जस्टिस मित्रा जी, दीपक मिश्रा का लिखा है, उसमें चंद्रचूड़ जी का लिखा है, सबका लिखा है, पढ़ने में, और आप दिखाई रही हैं, शायद उसको कहने में बहुत समय लगेगा। देखिए, कुल मिलाकर कई जगह देखा जा रहा है कि हिंदुस्तान है, अभिव्यक्ति की आजादी है, तो चर्चा तो हो सकती है, और हर बात में कहीं ना कहीं सुप्रीम कोर्ट सही है, इसको भी कहना उचित नहीं है, क्योंकि
नहीं,
बहुत सी चीजें ऐसी हैं। जी,
चर्चा जरूर हो सकती है, लेकिन पर्सनल अटैक्स एक चीफ जस्टिस के बारे में कहना कि वही धार्मिक जो विवाद हैं, सिविल वॉर्स हैं, उनके लिए उनको रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी लेनी होगी, ये तो एक पर्सनल चीज हो गई, जिससे
नहीं वो
बीजेपी नड्डा ने भी कहा है कि ये गलत है।
मैं उस पर भी आ रहा हूं, एकदम सही बात है, पर्सनल अटैक नहीं करना चाहिए। तो वो जस्टिस शाह पर पर्सनल अटैक नहीं था, या सुप्रीम कोर्ट राम मंदिर के फैसले पर सुप्रीम कोर्ट के ऊपर पर्सनल अटैक नहीं था। उस दिन विपक्ष के मुंह में दही जम गई थी, क्यों नहीं कोई बोला है? विपक्ष के लोग ही जब कुछ बोल रहे थे। और उसमें भी कहना यह है कि लगभग 195 में इस आर्टिकल, इसमें संशोधन हुआ, इस नियम में, संविधान के इस संशोधन हुआ 1995 में, 2013 में भी संशोधन हुआ। 1995 संशोधन के अगेंस्ट 120 पीआईएल और याचिका दाखिल हुई। उसको क्यों नहीं सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जो है कहा कि भाई हम सुन लेते हैं? सुप्रीम कोर्ट के पास सुनने का टाइम नहीं था, उसको तो हाई कोर्ट में भेज दिया गया। इसमें क्यों हड़बड़ी थी कि 2 दिन के अंदर सुनकर और एक इंटरिम आदेश टाइप पास कर दिया गया कि भाई हम इस फैसले पर पहुंच? कौन सा असाधारण चीज था इसमें? और उसमें नहीं था, जबकि बिल वही है, संशोधन हुआ है इसमें। तो 95 में अगर आपको साधारण लगा केस, हाईकोर्ट भेज दिया, तो ये भी साधारण था क्योंकि संशोधन हुए थे। तो ये दिखता है। दूसरी बात बरखा जी, सुओ मोटो लिया गया था। उत्तर प्रदेश में तो कानून व्यवस्था बहुत खराब है, ये महामहिम ने कहा है। उसके बाद देखिए, मणिपुर का सुओ मोटो ले लिया गया, लेकिन मुर्शिदाबाद का क्यों नहीं लिया गया? ये धार्मिक चीजें क्यों हो रही हैं? आखिर आप क्या चाहते क्या है? मैं किसी के खिलाफ नहीं हूं, मैं कह रहा हूं चर्चा होगी, और चर्चा में चाहे वो माननीय सांसद हो या हम लोग यहाँ चर्चा करेंगे, कोई भी गलत करेगा, चर्चा होगी। अगर एक अश्वनी शाही अभी 2 लाख के नोटों के साथ कहीं पकड़े जाते हैं, तो पूरे देश में फैलेगा कि भाजपा के प्रवक्ता के पास 2 लाख के अवैध नोट पकड़े गए। लेकिन एक महा सांसद, वो क्या नाम है, जज साहब के पास नोट जले हुए बोरों में पाए जाते हैं, उनका ट्रांसफर कर दिया जाता है, उनका खिलाफ सारी चीजें खत्म हो जाती हैं। ये देखिए, दोहरा मापदंड नहीं चलेगा। 3 स्तंभ हैं, तो 3 स्तंभ को एक दूसरे के साथ चलना चाहिए मिलकर, सबका सम्मान सबको करना चाहिए। जी जी, बोल।
आपने ना कहते भी कुछ सवाल उठाए हैं। आपने एक सिलेक्टिवनेस सुप्रीम कोर्ट के बारे में कही है कि सुओ मोटो मणिपुर का केस उठाया गया, लेकिन मुर्शिदाबाद का नहीं उठाया गया। सो यू हैव alleged a bias, but you are right in saying that a country can debate. In a democracy, you can debate the verdict of the Supreme Court. There is no bar on that. Sanjay Jha, your old erstwhile congressman, now a prominent BJP leader, the Assam chief minister, makes precisely that point. He says, look, the BJP has already drawn the red lines that needed to be drawn here. But the Congress has often been guilty of targeting chief justices, whether it's Ranjan Gogoi, whether it is Deepak Mishra, whether it's Dhananjay Chandrachud. Those are only 3 of the ones that he has named. What is actually going on here? Tensions between politicians and judiciary are not new. Need I remind everybody that the only time India's parliament was unanimous on any issue was when it came to curbing the powers of how judges appoint judges, right? So do respond here.
Yeah. Barkha, I think this is a very serious debate, and I'm glad you're doing it. I don't want this debate to be derailed by the red herring being posted by the Assam Chief Minister. I think let's get serious. This is not political rhetoric. I think what we are witnessing, and I speak as an ordinary citizen of this country, is a threat being given to the Supreme Court of India. I have come several times on your programs and I have repeated it multiple times as well ad nauseum that India's democratic and constitutional institutions are under threat. The one institution that remained and continues to remain in the minds of several people as a bastion of hope has been the Supreme Court. Do not ignore what Dubey has said. And if you heard Mr. Ashwini Shahi, there is no regret or remorse at all. In fact, he's very much a robust defender of what Mr. Dubey has said, because bottom line, that is the DNA of the BJP and the RSS. Now, let me put some facts on the table. To Mr. Ashwini ji and to anybody from the BJP and the RSS in the right-wing ecosystem, tell me which politician has ever in India's history accused a Chief Justice of India of encouraging civil wars? I mean, did that man even know what he's talking about? Dubey is an MP, apparently a 4-time MP of Parliament. And he says that the Supreme Court is encouraging a religious war. Why is, and this is the fundamental elephant in the room, Barkha, that has to be spoken on your show, because your show has greater credibility than a lot of big media 9 p.m. and 8 p.m. shows. So I will say it on your program. Why is the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who finds enough time to rake up the history of the Congress to blame Pandit Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi and whatnot, why is he silent on today's crisis that India faces? I mean, hats off to the Supreme Court of India for maintaining the dignity of the House and not so moto holding them for contempt. I would say, why isn't the Supreme Court of India, besides Manipur, and can you imagine Mr. Ashwini Shahi is comparing Manipur, which has burned for 2 years and more, where a state where the BJP itself
Okay.
has had to acknowledge the
You
crisis.
you
He's
you
comparing it to
clearly
Murshidabad. No,
I need to
I need
yeah.
to make one more point. Hang on. This is the important point. And we need to pay attention to this. Why is Dubey upset? Dubey is upset because of the fact that the Supreme Court has withheld the certain provisions of the WAQF amendment bill. What do you think prompted Dubey to call a distinguished gentleman, an impartial chief election commissioner, S.Y. Qureshi, as a Muslim commissioner? Don't you see the angle? I mean, isn't the bigotry and the majoritarianism and the vulgar communal politics of the BJP out in the open? And why are we forgetting that it
Your
was
basic
under Mr.
argument.
Modi? No. Why is it that under Mr. Modi as the Prime Minister, you had the Supreme Court Collegium going openly in public and holding a press conference and saying India's democracy is in danger? You're seeing that play out in front of you.
Okay, all right. Sanjay, your argument essentially seems to be that you cannot ignore Dubey. Dubey has been asked to do this, and there's a good cop. You're implying a good cop, bad cop politics here.
Absolutely. The BJP and the RSS speak with a forked tongue, basically.
Okay, hang on. Let's give the other two. Ashwini ji, baki dono ko thoda sa mauka de do. I'll come back to you right after that. Rajat, let's bring you in. I think you have very perceptively, in a different context on this program, made the point that one of the challenges for the BJP going forward is the varying demands of its base, right? So governance calls upon any party to move closer to the center, but politics, the BJP does have its own base for whom the BJP is not right-wing enough and so on. So you've seen a very furious debate within the BJP's base over Mr. Nadda's comments, totally disassociating the party from Nishikant Dubey. Sanjay Jha makes the point that Nishikant Dubey would not have made these comments without some sort of encouragement, and this disassociation is not enough. What do you say? What is actually going on here in terms of politics?
So, well, I understand, and I have seen, the supporters of the BJP visibly upset that Nishikant Dubey's comments, which were from an intellectual prism, were right in terms of questioning the Supreme Court. And let me tell you, what Sanjay Jha was showing was just a seasonal love affair for Supreme Court. This season comes when he starts to hate Supreme Court for judgments which have been passed duly, and the other
Yeah.
season he falls head over heels in love with the same Supreme Court. So let's leave aside this seasonality of love affair and go to the very fundamentals and basics. We the
Sure.
people have made Supreme Court. With what it is a social contract between we the people, and no institution can be immune to criticism. A, B, nobody has been God ordained to us as if this is the superior being, and we need to fall in reverence to that. Supreme Court therefore should be open, needs to have a thick skin, and should be open to fair criticism. Look at the amount of attacks that the Vice President's office and Vice President himself had to face after he made certain very important remarks. This tussle between the executive or the legislature and the judiciary on this other side was long pending. It has reached to a tipping point where the judges will have to walk the talk. If they are putting these artificial timelines on the governors and the presidents, doing away with the veto powers of the governors with a strike of a pen, and they themselves do not hold themselves to the same level of punctuality with regards to addressing the pendency of cases. 60-70,000 cases are pending in Supreme Court. They just make passing remarks in every annual event of the Supreme Court. Should we as citizens who are suffering because of this not come out and question? Why is this that this institution has become larger than life? That you cannot come in and question, nobody can step out and question. I'm not talking about the judgments made. What is a greater sin that Congress repeatedly does is it questions the judgment itself. Here it is about certain aspects of Supreme Court which they need to come out and stand themselves.
But Rajat, if I may interject, I don't have any disagreement that anybody should be free to question the response of a Supreme Court on an issue. For example, in the past, when the Supreme Court did not decriminalize homosexuality, or there are judgments that come on women, there are people like me who have come out and said this is a completely inappropriate judgment. The point in dispute is the language used for the Chief Justice of India. Obviously, the BJP president was embarrassed enough to issue a public statement. It is very different to say, we believe the Supreme Court has been selective. We believe the Supreme Court should first impose a deadline on its own capacity to try judgments and then put a deadline on the president. I think that would be legitimate argument. But to say the Chief Justice of India is responsible for religious strife and civil wars, isn't that in a different category?
So I have said it on a few TV discussions also, making a personal remark. You can attack an institution on certain credibility tests that you've come up with, but attacking any individual was certainly not called for. And I think he should have apologized on that. And I think the party president also came up against this basic name calling of the Honorable Chief Justice. I think that is where he crossed the Rubicon, which shouldn't have happened. You need to create decorum and very rightfully have certain questions for every single institution. Remember, executive can be asked questions on a daily basis. Legislatures get asked questions every 5 years. When can Supreme Court, not even the Vice President's office can come out and ask questions? Where is that sandbox where we can open our minds and talk freely about the issues languishing inside the honorable justices of our country?
Okay, let's bring in Sanjay Hegde. I think Rajat Sethi has a pretty sort of nuanced point here, and the nuanced point is this. Everybody has the right to question the Supreme Court. The language used by Nishikant Dubey was inappropriate. The BJP has said that language was not acceptable. He's even saying Nishikant Dubey should have apologized. Mr. Dubey, I don't think is going to apologize. He has cryptically reposted the Assam Chief Minister's comments today, which has the roster list of all the times when the Congress has attacked the judges in the past. Do you accept this basic formulation that the Supreme Court has to be open to public commentary as long as the language is appropriate and not personal? I think that is the point I'm taking away from Rajat Sethi.
Well, way back in 1936, Lord Atkins said, justice is not a cloistered virtue. She must be allowed to suffer the scrutiny and respectful comments of ordinary men. So yes, scrutiny, comment by all means, but respectful. The moment you go after any individual judge, attribute motives, you say that Justice Sanjeev Khanna is responsible for civil war in this country, then you have not only disrespected the Justice Sanjeev Khanna, you've disrespected the court, you've disrespected the judges, and most important, you've disrespected your own government and the country. Are you saying that there is a civil war in the country, which means that your government has lost control over some portion of the country? Are you saying that a parliamentarian can go ahead and say that the Chief Justice of India, Justice Sanjeev Khanna, has caused a civil war in the country and that the Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, has done nothing about it? What is it that you are telling the world at large? More than the Supreme Court, I think the party and the government need to take Mr. Dubey to task immediately. Yes, say what you want about judgments. We lawyers also, we freely criticize judgments. Justice Sanjeev Khanna ruled against us when we sought 100% checking of the VVPAT. We thought it was a wrong decision, but fine. The law, once the court has spoken, that is the last word on the subject till the court changes its mind. We believe that
it is not as if motives have. I agree totally on the language, but I'm saying it's not as if motives have not been imputed to other judges, depending on the judgment. Like Dhananjay Chandrachud's meeting, for example, with Prime Minister Modi, right? Just that meeting and that video, the number of motives that were insinuated in the public commentary that followed.
Yes, but it was not said of any judge that X judgment or Y judgment was because the judge had a particular bias. And I did hear Mr. Ashwini Sahi speak about Indira Gandhi's comments on Justice Shah. There's a video going around. If you check that video date correctly, it was Indira Gandhi in opposition facing Justice Shah, who had then retired from the Supreme Court and was heading the Shah Commission of Inquiry. So please, there is a huge difference. Because a person has been a judge does not mean that there is immunity from scrutiny as far as his judgments are concerned. But by and large, when somebody is in office, you respect the office, you definitely do not attribute any motives whatsoever, and you at best say, with respect to the judge, we believe that he got this judgment wrong. There's one more point I want to make about the WAQF Act. Just one quick thing. This is what sparked it all off. The Supreme Court has not passed any order on the WAQF Act so far. It is the learned Solicitor General who, after the Supreme Court's questioning, came back and said, yes, to allay your apprehensions, we are making this statement that we will not give effect to these provisions. It was the Solicitor General's statement which has been recorded. If the Solicitor General had not made that statement, we do not know what order or what would have been passed. Having first given that statement, now the government can't go around and blame the judiciary for recording it.
Okay, before we come back to Ashwini ji and to Sanjay, both of whom had their hands up, Vice President Dhankhar was just a day before Nishikant Dubey. And therefore, all of these comments and the tension vis-a-vis the court has to be seen in a larger context. It's important. Let's play out the Vice President's remarks.
The judges who issued a mandamus virtually to the President and presented a scenario it will be law of the land have forgotten the power of the Constitution. How can that combination of judges deal with something under Article 145(3) is preserved? It was then for 5 out of 8. We need to make amends in that also now. 5 out of 8 would mean interpretation will be by majority. Or 5 constitutes more than majority in 8. But leave that aside. Article 142, Article 142 has become a nuclear missile against democratic forces. Available to judiciary 24/7.
Like a nuclear missile, says Vice President Dhankhar. Also comments that have been deconstructed in rather critical terms in sections of the media. Let me bring in Ashwini Shahi. Ashwini ji, अगर इकट्ठे चीजों को देखें तो ऐसे लगता है कि बीजेपी और जुडिशरी के बीच में बहुत टेंशन है।
कम से कम महामहिम जी को तो थोड़ा सा बाहर रखिए पार्टी से फिलहाल थोड़ी देर के लिए, उसके बाद वो उनके विचार हैं, क्योंकि वो पार्टी के सदस्य नहीं है। हेगड़े साहब को मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूं कि अभी उन्होंने कहा कि तुषार मेहता जी ने ये कहा और वहां से हाँ होता गया, कोर्ट ने कुछ नहीं कहा। धन्यवाद आपका। अभी तक तो इंडिया अलायंस के लोग, विरोधी दलों के लोग और संजय जी यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, इनके तरह जो है कांग्रेस के समर्थक यही हल्ला मचा रहे थे, यही भ्रम फैला रहे थे, ये स्टे मिल गया, स्टे मिल गया, स्टे मिल गया। आपका धन्यवाद, आपने इसको क्लियर किया बरखा जी की सम्मानित दर्शकों के लिए। दूसरा मैं ये कहना चाहता हूं कि अभी संजय जी बात कर रहे थे, वो भूल गए, और मैं हेगड़े साहब आपकी बात से सहमत हूं कि एकदम सम्मान होना चाहिए, शब्दों से किसी का अपमान नहीं होना चाहिए, ये होना चाहिए। मगर हम लोग एक बात भूल जाते हैं, राहुल जी को सजा हो गई थी सूरत में, बरखा जी क्या क्या किया गया था, जज को धमकाया गया था, जज को सुरक्षा मांगनी पड़ी थी। तो ये कांग्रेसियों का कल्चर, संजय जी थोड़ा सा इस पर ध्यान दें, ज्यादा बढ़िया हो। और अभी जो हमारे माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जो है ने वो किया है, ट्वीट किया है, उसमें जयराम रमेश जी का एक ट्वीट है बड़ा लंबा चौड़ा, उसकी पहली लाइन जरा बरखा जी आप पढ़ लीजिएगा तो ज्यादा बढ़िया होगा। जरा सा अभी आप दिखा भी रही थी उसको। टुडे इज द लास्ट वर्किंग डे फॉर द रिटायरिंग चीफ जस्टिस ऑफ इंडिया, हिज लेगेसी विल कंटिन्यू टू बी डिबेटेड। तो ये चीजें, और उसमें बहुत लंबा चौड़ा है, देखिए उनके विचार हैं। उसके बाद फिर जो है उसी में कई, अभी एक जज साहब ने सिर्फ वो हिंदुओं के लिए कुछ बोल दिया था इलाहाबाद के, तो उसके खिलाफ कितने लोगों ने महाभियोग की बात कर दी थी। तो भाई ये जो जज साहब है उनके खिलाफ भी करना चाहिए। तीसरी बात मैं जो कहना चाहता हूं, मेरा देखिए सवाल पूछने का हक हर भारतीय को है, संविधान ने हमको वो आजादी दी है, विपक्षियों को दी है तो हमको भी दी है। हेगड़े साहब चाहे संजय जी, एक चीजों को अगर हम कोई उठाते हैं तो समाज है, समाज में बातें उठ जाती हैं, कभी कभी उसके अभ्रंश भी हो जाते हैं। हिंदू पक्ष के लिए और मुस्लिम पक्ष के लिए हम लोग जब बात करने बैठते हैं तो जब दोहरा मापदंड मैंने पूछा, उस पर किसी ने जवाब नहीं दिया, संजय जी ने भी नहीं दिया, हेगड़े साहब ने भी हमारा मार्गदर्शन नहीं किया कि जब उसी बिल पर 120 याचिका पड़ी तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट को सुनने का मौका नहीं मिला। अश्वनी उपाध्याय और चीख कर कह रहे थे जैन साहब कि हम लोगों ने डाली, हम लोगों को हाई कोर्ट भेज दिया गया। यहां पर कैसे उस याचिकाओं को सुन लिया गया, ये बहुत बड़ा प्रश्न है अपने आप में कि आखिर क्या खासियत थी। तीन चार कुछ याद चीजें दिलाना चाहता हूं कि गैर मुस्लिमों पर जो है, जो तिरुपति जो 2 पॉइंट जो है यहाँ पर जज साहब लोगों को था कि 2 लोगों को उसमें रखा जाए, उसमें दिक्कत थी। तो तिरुपति कुंभ और तारकेश्वर मंदिर में मुस्लिम रह चुके हैं इंचार्ज, ये बोर्ड और उसकी बात हो रही थी, इंचार्ज रह चुके हैं, तिरुपति में भी रह चुके हैं, कुंभ में आजम खां का नाम मैं ले लेता हूं। अब कागज हमको जो है कैसे मिलेगा, इनको आपत्ति थी वर्क बाय यूजर के नाम पर, तो राम मंदिर के कागज क्यों मांगेगा 5 साल तक? भोजशाला के यहाँ पर ज्ञान व्यापी के कागज मांगे जा रहे हैं और यहाँ कहा जा रहा है कि कागज कहां से लाएंगे। ये देखिए दोहरा सिर्फ मैं याद दिला रहा हूं बरखा जी आपको और आपके दर्शकों को, ये दोहरा मापदंड, बहुत लोग इस पर चर्चा कर रहे हैं। एक 1972 में एक जजमेंट आया था शेषामल और 2004 में मालाबार मामले में कहा गया कि पुजारी सेकुलर होते हैं। अच्छी बात है, पुजारी सेकुलर होते हैं, तो वक्फ जैसी प्रशासनिक संस्था में धर्म क्यों देखा जा रहा है, ये बहुत बड़ा सवाल है, इसको देखना पड़ेगा। सबरीमाला में तो घुस जाता है सुप्रीम कोर्ट, मगर मस्जिदों में महिलाओं के प्रवेश पर कोई ध्यान नहीं देता है। इसके लिए भी तो कम से कम कुछ होना चाहिए। त्रिपुर सुंदरी में पशु बलि पर रोक, बकरीद में नहीं रोक। अब एक और बात मैं कहना चाहता हूं, देखिए ये सवाल उठाने के बाद, मैं किसी का अपमान नहीं कर रहा हूं, एक जागरूक नागरिक होने के नाते तीस्ता सीतलवाड़ में किस तरीके से गर्मियों के दिनों में छुट्टी में डीबी बना दी जाती है, जब मामला जो फ्रैक्चर्ड मैंडेट आता है तो फिर तुरंत जो है बना दिया जाता है 3 जजों की। कैसे
अच्छा, लेट मी इंटरजेक्ट नाउ। आपने जो उदाहरण
जी
दिए उनका मोटा मोटा पॉइंट ये बन रहा है कि आप कहते हैं कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट में एक डबल स्टैंडर्ड है, एक
एकदम है।
सिलेक्टिव एप्लीकेशन है। ये आपकी आर्ग्यूमेंट है। लेकिन आपने सबरीमाला का एग्जांपल दिया, उससे मुझे याद आया कि सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ट्रिपल तलाक जो रीड डाउन हुआ था, बाद में पार्लियामेंट में आया, सुप्रीम कोर्ट से आया। तो इट डिपेंड्स ऑन तीसरा सतरवाद की बात की, कोई आपको उमर खालिद बोलेगा। तो व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज कि ये दोनों तरफ लोग अपनी रोस्टर लिस्ट निकाल सकते हैं, राइट? दोनों दोनों
यही बात रजत जी ने कहा, यही बात को कि भाई उनका मौका मिलता है तो वो अपना जो है
Okay,
वो सीजनल है मामला।
let's get Sanjay Jha accused of seasonal love for the Supreme Court. I think there is some merit in the fact that when the court rules in the favor of the side you support, I don't mean you, Sanjay, whoever, then the Supreme Court seems fair, brave, interventionist. When the Supreme Court either takes a long time to reach a decision or a decision goes in a different way, then the Supreme Court is accused of being compromised. The court might feel that we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. That is the point I think Rajat is making. And of course, there are larger points he's making about judicial overreach, which is an ongoing debate.
Barkha, I insist on having the same amount of time that Mr.
Sure.
Ashwini Shahi has taken
Sure.
because I thought he was monopolizing the entire conversation. But I'll keep my points as brief as possible. Number one, I still don't know whether Mr. Dubey was talking that there is a civil war going on in this country encouraged by the Supreme Court or Chief Justice Sanjeev Khanna, or is he giving a threat to the people of this country that a civil war will play out? I think this is a very serious statement. A BJP MP of Parliament is using words like civil war or religious war. The question that needs to be asked, that neither Ashwini ji nor Mr. Sethi have answered, is that a threat of an impending crisis for India that the BJP supporters and the right wing and the fundamentalists are talking about? Which is why I'm saying this is not just a debate, Barkha. This is a serious issue. I think all your viewers have a right to know what is this man in Parliament really talking about. My second question, which is important, Rajat Sethi tried to make this very sarcastic quip about a seasonal love for the Supreme Court. I would say that the lotus has become the white lotus. That is the web series that Mr. Sethi is actually propagating, and I'll tell you why. Why is this entire debate happened? This seasonal love for the white lotus is because of the Supreme Court on the WAQF amendment bill, which is why you find Dubey talking about a Muslim commissioner, and obviously the strictures on the governor of Tamil Nadu, and by consequent, even the president of this country. Now, here is the point, Barkha, that we need to mention. As you know that Mr. Modi is a master in doing dog whistle politics, can I ask the BJP today, what is your view on Vice President Mr. Dhankhar actually making a statement on the Supreme Court talking about a nuclear missile attack? I can tell you that is the trigger why the BJP is feeling very emboldened, because the constitutional authority, instead of being an independent bipartisan player, is playing a very crude game of politics.
So what do you want? What do you want the government to do at this point? What do you want the government to do? So here is my point.
Here is my point, that Dubey needs to be right now promptly, and we want the Prime Minister of India should actually make a statement on this, because this is against the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India. Who is the parallel to that in politics? It has to be the Prime Minister of this country.
Okay.
Mr. Modi should personally kind of not just chide or admonish him. He needs to be suspended or sacked with immediate effect. And I want to add a point here. The BJP, since Mr. Sethi mentioned the seasonal, it's stuck on my head actually. I would love to know what Mr. Sethi feels about, besides the White Lotus, what the Supreme Court said on electoral bond, what they said, in fact, on bulldozers, right? So I think end of day, let's be honest, Sanjay Hegde said it right. My last sentence, Barkha, Sanjay Hegde said it absolutely right. We have a right to disagree with the view. But to blame the Supreme Court for religious and civil wars, I think that's a very serious statement, and it needs to be have
Okay.
consequences.
Okay. Now, let's give time to Rajat and Sanjay Hegde. Rajat, to you first. You know, as I was saying to Ashwini ji, he had a long list of cases that he felt was selective application. But actually, he didn't mention in that. And this is what happens. Both sides will argue from their pre-stated positions. You know, whether it's Shah Bano judgment back in the day that the Congress actually then goes around in Parliament, right? The Shah Bano alimony case for Muslim women, or triple talaq most recently. These are also cases that have emerged from the Supreme Court. There is a case pending in the Supreme Court, my producers tell me, Yasmin Zubair Ahmed Pirzadeh versus Union of India. This is about the rights of women and mosques. Right? And so the point I'm trying to make is the Supreme Court, for all of its flaws, or the courts, have remained the institution to which ordinary people turn to for application of their constitutional rights, and interventions have come across faiths. I'm just making that point, that interventions, and I named two prominent ones, Shah Bano and triple talaq. So what is the Supreme Court right now being accused of? The second thing we need to be clear of is it this Supreme Court? Is it Supreme Court the way it's structured? So therefore all Supreme Courts? What are we actually saying? What is the point of debate?
See, how I see it, and I'll not go into the jabs on political side. Let's keep that aside for a time being. But, where does Supreme Court perception wise is failing before a common citizen like myself is that what are those rules? Can it list down the rules that under these rules I'm going to open the doors of my court chambers at 12 in the midnight? You cannot be selective. If it is a Yaqub Menon, I'm going to open the doors at 2 in the night just before the sentence has to be executed. For what reason? There are myriads of cases which require a similar amount of alarmist attitude from the Supreme Court. My point is, lay it down so that not just your fellow justices, but also the upcoming future justices can also have those same rule book around which justice can be seen to be delivered at the same level of parameters that you are choosing for certain select cases. Otherwise, it defeats the central principle of equality. If you are not equal between two citizens, and therefore
but is this comment about the Supreme
there are
Court?
certain people who are still languishing on bail.
No, but is this comment about the Supreme Court institutionally? Because as I said, Ashwini ji will say Atisa Setalwad, Sanjay Jha or Sanjay Hegde might say, look at Omar Khalid, right? Ashwini ji will say Sabrimala, somebody might say, but triple talaq came from the court. And for every example, there is a counter example. So what?
No, fair enough. And I was, for a very long time, I used to talk in support that Omar Khalid should have got the bail. But the devil is in the detail. I was surprised when Justice Chandrachud came out and said that his applications were withdrawn by his own lawyer several times.
That was in my podcast.
So either there should be greater discussions or talks about individual cases as to why was a seemingly partisan position taken by the Supreme Court, so that there is a sense that there is this body which is not favoring one individual or one institution over the other. This is the basic test that Supreme Court should now proactively do. And let me tell you, my final point, what Vice President said, I thought that Sanjay Jha is a person of literature and he's a man of words, and he knows, that there can be idioms which can be thrown in. Nobody is saying that a Supreme Court has a missile in its hand, a nuclear one. I mean, come on, you need to make a point and you need to ensure that the point is carried forward and it is scathing as it can get. And I think above all, it is his office. What else do you expect? This is the second biggest office in our country. If even that office cannot speak freely, then are we all slaves? Have we created a Frankenstein monster that we have to bow down before? I am sorry, no. I did not sign up for that social contract where I'm creating a Frankenstein monster which I can't go out and question. I should have the reasonable rights to go out and question as much as I can get questioned on my public conduct if I'm occupying a public office. That's my basic set of principles.
Okay.
Set of principles should not change, and this is what Nishikant Dubey said. You show me the man, I'll show you the law. That aspect, I think Supreme Court should ensure actively to do away with and resist from.
Okay, Sanjay Hegde, let's bring you in. I think the point being made is A, about a kind of depleting credibility of the judges. The judges, as they did in the Tamil Nadu governor's case, setting a deadline for the president that they don't apply to themselves. The perception of selectiveness. Why does the court open at midnight for some cases, not for others? Today, Murshidabad was before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court found flaws in the petition, asked them that they had the powers to apply it again. Now, I'll ask a legal question. Nobody wants to be reasonable at these times, but let me ask a legal question. One of the gaps, I would say, in India's judicial system is that unlike other countries where once the court establishes a precedent and that precedent becomes the norm for other courts to follow, we are very judge-centric. So one judge can go one way, the other judge can go completely a different way, and there is no precedent that actually defines the responses of judges. And that is why there is this खुला debate कि अरे इस केस में तो ऐसा हुआ, उस केस में तो ऐसा नहीं हुआ. Is that the problem?
That is one of the problems. But first, let me disabuse Mr. Sethi of a few things. There is a difference when a man is going to be hung. So the court was opened to see that even the most desperate of pleas gets a hearing in open court. Sometimes the judges could have very well have heard it in their houses and said, no, we are not going further. Justice Deepak Mishra, if I remember rightly, opened the court and said, no, we'll have it in open court. The same law was also applied to the Nirbhaya accused. Even they came in at the last minute. So the law, as far as death sentences is concerned, is that any plea, no matter how desperate, has to be heard simply because if it succeeds, then a man's life is saved. If a man is hung, then all those pleas become useless. So this thing going on about Yaqub Memon is neither here nor there. The second part of your question is, are we a judge-centric court? To a great extent, possibly yes, because there are 17 benches in the Supreme Court, and sometimes it's said that it's a polyvocal court. Each judge has his own ideology, his life experiences, and when given precedents, they interpret it differently. However, all of them so far, touch wood, thank God, have stood firmly on the side of basic structure. So far. The point is that you may make all these comments about the Supreme Court, that it is polyvocal, it doesn't follow precedent, and several things. But when you attack judges personally, judges who do not have any means of defending themselves, who do not come out and give public statements, who can reply only through their judgments and their work, then there definitely is an imbalance. If you destroy the judiciary, then what do you replace it with? Khap panchayats? Do you want anarchy to take over? Do you want to do away with the Supreme Court? Do you want to have a country where the rule of law doesn't exist and where it is not respected? That is the real question.
Before I take last comments, I think let's talk a little bit about the vice president, right? I think Rajat Sethi said, if the vice president does not have the right to question the courts, then who does, and why doesn't he have that right? Let me start taking last comments with Ashwini Shahi ji. आपसे शुरू करती हूँ अश्विनी जी. जगदीप धनखर ने जो ये phrase use किया, nuclear missile. Obviously he used it as a metaphor. Obviously, ये तो obvious है. लेकिन क्या उनको ये करना चाहिए था? आपने कहा कि इसको बीजेपी से बाहर रखिए, लेकिन आपने भी वो ऑपेड देखे होंगे. टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में भी एक ऑपेड था कि धनखर साहब को ये नहीं कहना चाहिए था, उनकी जगह नहीं है ये कहने की. ये मैं अखबार से कोट करके आपको कह रही हूँ.
जी नहीं, अखबार ने लिखा होगा, अच्छा है. उन्होंने एक सिर्फ अपने संविधान के एक आर्टिकल के बारे में कहा कि 142 का यूज, जिसमें असीमित शक्तियां दी गई हैं संविधान की सुप्रीम कोर्ट को, तो वो उनका प्रयोग कर रहे हैं और वो मिसाइल की तरह यूज कर रहे हैं. लेकिन उन्होंने अगली लाइन भी कही कि 145 का ध्यान नहीं दे रहे हैं. इस पर भी तो हम लोगों को सोचना चाहिए. देखिए, समीक्षा का, संविधान की समीक्षा का अधिकार है, हमारा संविधान देता है. मगर उसमें तो सबको, तीनों को तो बांध कर रखा है, तीनों जो हमारे पिलर हैं सबको बांध के रखा है, सभी आर्टिकल अलग 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 आ रहे हैं। तो उन्होंने एक आर्टिकल को बताया देश के बच्चों को, जहां पर वो, वहां पर लोग पढ़ने वाले थे, लोग जो लड़कों जिसको वो संबोधित कर रहे थे, उन्होंने एक आर्टिकल का हवाला दिया। अब उसको चाहे दूसरे वे में ले जाया जाए तो वो अलग बात है। मेरा मानना है कि निशिकांत दुबे जी के मामले में सिर्फ हम लोगों ने एक चीज पर अभी डिस्कशन किया, मामले दो हैं। महामहिम राज्यपाल वाला जो मामला आया था जिसमें यह कहा गया 3 महीने में बांधा गया, वहां भी तो एक दुरुपयोग है। उस पर उन्होंने कहा था इस चीज को, धनखड़ साहब ने, कि उस आर्टिकल 145 को नहीं देखते हैं। अगर आज हम इस चीज को हम मान भी लेते हैं कि भाई ठीक है, अच्छी बात है, तो एक लाइन मैं अभी हेगड़े साहब को कहना चाहता हूं कि जो इन्होंने कहा ये उन कांग्रेसियों को समझाते जो सूरत के जज को धमका रहे थे कि किसी को धमकाइए मत, वो जुडिशरी है, तो थोड़ा सा उधर भी अच्छा लगता। अब चीजें क्यों उठ के आ रही हैं? दूसरी बात, ये जो बिल अभी आया, जो तमिलनाडु के जज और केरल के जज के बारे में जो 3 महीने का टाइम दिया गया, ये एक हम लोगों को याद होगा पोस्टल बिल आया था, शायद 86 में आया था, आई थिंक 86 में ज्ञानी जैल सिंह ने उसको अपने पास रखा और वो कानून नहीं बन पाया जिसमें चिट्ठी पढ़ सकता था कोई भी। ये राजीव गांधी जी लेकर आए थे। आज तक किसी कांग्रेसी ने उस पर जिक्र नहीं किया। मुझे लगता है कि संजय जी पत्रकारिता के साथ उसके बाद कांग्रेस में एक्टिव मेंबर रहे, प्रवक्ता भी रहे, कभी उठाया हो इन्होंने तो बताएं कि कम से कम हम लोग जो है देश के न्यायपालिका के साथ हैं। ये चीज साहबानों का केस वहां बना, आपने अभी नाम लिया, और यहां ले आकर पलट दिया जाता है, तो उस समय क्या न्यायपालिका का सम्मान होता था और आज अपमान हो रहा है? ये बड़ा ही एक बेसिक डिफरेंस। मैं अभी भी कहता हूं कि शब्दों की चोट बहुत खराब होती है, किसी को नहीं कहना चाहिए। जी
Sanjay Jha, I think the point being made is that the Supreme Court has always been dragged into the politics of the time. And there are examples from the past when the Congress has done it. There are examples from today when the BJP stands accused of doing it by, the party you support. This double speak needs, when I say double speak, I'm talking about the politicians, not the court. This is politics. And Sanjay Hegde is making the point that the court has no recourse to actually protecting itself, defending itself. So today, there was a petition against Nishikant Dubey, by the way, before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, take it to the Attorney General. It's not for us to decide on this, right? And that's where that matter rests. Where does this go from here? If Dubey is not sacked, I mean, how long are you going to hammer this point?
Well, Barkha, eventually, how do the programs like this really help, right? Because your viewers will watch it, they will listen to all of us four people speak and form an opinion.
Yeah.
I believe this matter is beyond the narrow prism of political parochialism. It is about looking at how India's democratic future should be scripted. Now, my point is very straightforward. You have a BJP member of parliament, and we need to say this repeatedly because, in all conversations we keep hearing, the sacrosanct, consecrated parliament, the temple of democracy. Then the temple of democracy is being violated because what did Dubey say? Barkha made a statement, I think you can put it up on your program, that the Supreme Court is taking the country towards an anarchy. That's a serious statement. He said the Supreme Court is going beyond limits. As a student of English, I will feel that these statements actually are not just insinuating, they have an implied animosity or a threat written all over it. What are you trying to say? That the Supreme Court is driving this country towards some kind of a civil war? These are not statements that a member of parliament is expected to make casually. And here is my whole point. That end of day, are you witnessing, because everyone is talking about Donald Trump every day, you are seeing how an authoritarian or a fascist mindset attacks institutions. He's attacking the Supreme Court even when it was more of a majority towards the Democrats. And even today, when the Supreme Court is supposed to be more conservative, but is not allowing his executive orders to go. And simultaneously, you're finding Mr. Modi's leaders taking on the Supreme Court. I think this is a serious issue. And when you have a judiciary where a high court judge has cash in his hand, then you have to clearly acknowledge that no institution of this country is free of serious internal schisms And we are not here trying to defend the Supreme Court as a holy cow. There are obvious fallibilities, but for God's sake, when you give it a spin of communalism by calling S.Y. Qureshi a Muslim commissioner, and you say that the Chief Justice of India, Sanjeev Khanna, is into a religious war, then I think all of us in this country need to take a deep breath and worry seriously about where we are headed.
Okay, let's quickly get closing comments from Rajat and Sanjay Hegde. Rajat, you said Vice President has the right to say this. There are a number of editorials I've been reading the last few days who say, no, he doesn't have the right to make this frontal attack. It's not his locus standi. In which capacity is he speaking when he attacks the courts in this way? What do you say to that?
I think he's speaking in the capacity of having sworn to protect and defend the Indian Constitution. And he is well within his right. I don't agree with any of these, respectfully, any of these op-eds which are getting published based on their understanding. I believe either create a sandbox to allow a common citizen to speak up his mind openly and freely against any institution which has been created by we the people, or allow certain offices which are way above the bickering between the balancing equations between the executive, judiciary, or the legislature. And clearly these two offices, the office of the Honorable President and the Honorable Vice President, qualifies for that, and he is actually the fit office to do this. Otherwise, you are trying to risk creating a monster out of an institution which has very recently failed spectacularly in a smell test in this cash scandal that happened with a Delhi High Court judge. That smell test was failed, and thereafter the test that followed, the litmus test that followed after that, the Supreme Court taking over the ability to actually investigate the matter in its own hand is laughable, to say the least. And I think every single citizen with conscience should come out and stop the Supreme Court on this slippery slope. And I think this is where this test, if it further fails, the Supreme Court will lose major share of credibility that it has built over decades. And this, they should be mindful. The justices should be mindful of this aspect.
Those are strong words, Sanjay Hegde. Very quickly on the Yashwant Verma case, the Indian Express reported today that the internal inquiry has reportedly confirmed that cash was indeed recovered or found. I don't want to say recovered, found at Yashwant Verma's residence. And Rajat Sethi makes the point that somehow that smell test failure goes right to the heart of how the Aam Janta will look at the judiciary. Very quick closing word.
Well, as I said, the actions of the court will speak for itself. The court necessarily had to insulate all judges, and it's not Justice Yashwant Verma alone. Otherwise, you will have a situation where any policeman can lodge an FIR and march into the judges' houses. So this particular process that has gone on. Immediately thereafter, 3 judges of the High Court were sent to inquire. I believe you or somebody else scooped the report. Let's see what it comes. The judiciary take care and is answerable to the people. The judiciary comes from the same people. But there is no elected emperor. There is no elected president or vice president who represent institutions themselves. One institution cannot cart against another. And last point, with regard to the Tamil Nadu governor, the Supreme Court judgment says nothing beyond what the central government itself had sent as a recommendation to governors. Please clear things within 3 months. There is a central government letter to that effect.
And when was this letter sent? When was this letter
2016. 2016 letter.
Okay, I think the reactions to this. Rajat and Ashwini both want to respond. Ashwini ji?
No, just let me complete one more thing.
One
more thing. And the Supreme Court, while dealing with the issue, said what has applied to the governor will also apply to the president. Please look why. Tomorrow, if there is a president who is minded not to allow a democratically elected government to function at the center, and we've had that situation with Gyani Zail Singh and Rajiv Gandhi at that point of time. Maybe there will be a president from a different party and a prime minister from a different party. We follow the Westminster form of government. It is the prime minister or the chief minister who is answerable. Indirectly elected presidents and appointed governors cannot stymie an elected government.
Okay. I was going to hold on, Sanjay. I was going to close, but I think both Ashwini and Rajat have responses to you. Ashwini ji, Rajat, and then Sanjay Jha. We'll take a quick round of last comments. Yeah, Ashwini ji.
जी देखिए बरखा जी हेगड़े साहब ने जो कहा एकदम सही कहा। गृह मंत्रालय ने एक चिट्ठी भेजा था, एक सलाह भेजी थी कि 3 महीने से ऊपर न लटकाइए, लेकिन इनके आदेश आया है उस आदेश में उसका कोई जिक्र नहीं है कि गृह मंत्रालय का रिकमेंडेशन है आप लोगों को ये करना है। यहाँ पर कोर्ट ने स्पष्ट ऑर्डर किया है उसके लिए कि आपको 3 महीने से ज्यादा एकदम एक ऑर्डर किया है महामहिम लोगों को, उसका कोई हवाला नहीं दिया गया है उसमें उस ऑर्डर में। और मुझे तो लगता है कि हेगड़े साहब को जजमेंट पढ़ना चाहिए। जी
Rajat quickly, you want to add to that? Rajat Sethi?
So it was said in a specific context regards to certain specific bills which the Ministry of Home Affairs had pointed it out. It was in context. None of these letters were suo moto created for a specific purpose of curtailing the powers within Article 200 of the governor. So please see and things in specific context. If you want to blow it out of context, then you will reach to different conclusions.
Sanjay Jha, quickly. Sanjay Jha.
Tell you the very fact that a prominent chief minister of the BJP tries to do the whataboutery and rationalize what Nishikant Dubey says, and thereafter Nishikant Dubey has the audacity to then retweet it, and I don't think JP Nadda is hereafter going to say a word, tells you that the BJP in principle is very much doing its act of convenient politics here. And I think that should be the biggest worry for a country. Nothing will happen. I think what you're seeing here is the vice president of this country exceeding his constitutional brief, playing a very partisan trench fair game, and then an MP takes off, makes outrageous statements against the Chief Justice in the Supreme Court, and the Prime Minister is silent. And you can already see the BJP brigade is actually amplifying this to say, well, condemn the Supreme Court, and soon they will start celebrating.
Okay, I have to close. I have one sentence to Sanjay Hegde. What do you think the Supreme Court might do? They've dismissed the petition against Dubey today. Do you see them doing more, or just ignoring it and looking the other way?
No. If a petition is badly drawn up, they will ignore it. If a proper petition comes, look, there are people who have asked for the Attorney General's permission. We will see whether the Attorney General grants permission or whether the Attorney General takes suo moto action himself. If the Attorney General does not grant permission, then a petition can be filed challenging the Attorney General's decision and also asking the Supreme Court to take action.
I somehow feel the last word on this subject has not been spoken. We're going to see a lot more confrontations around, the powers, the authorities, and the limitations of the Supreme Court. But I think we can all agree that the language used by Mr. Dubey certainly crossed all lines, no matter which side of the debate you're on. And the BJP itself has said that. The opposition is asking the BJP to do more than say that. We leave it there. Rajat Sethi, Sanjay Jha, Sanjay Hegde, and earlier to Ashwini Shahi. Thank you, and to our audience, see you tomorrow. Thanks as ever.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Voter Story and support independent, robust journalism.